My name's Steuart Pennington. I run a business called South Africa The Good News. I started it 10 years ago when South Africa was very much in the doldrums. You may recall the currency was 16 to 1 to the dollar, 21 to 1 to the pound. There was a flight of skills, a flight of corporates, and I just felt that there was another story to be told about South Africa. So I gave up my job in a strategy business and I started this business called South Africa The Good News. Since then, I've written 9 books on South Africa and related topics, and I've started a website on South Africa, www.sagoodnews.co.za, and a website on Africa, www.africagoodnews.com. Well, I've been doing it for 10 years. I've given some 500 talks on South Africa locally and abroad, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the United States, Dubai, and it's about presenting the full South African story. What my job is to do is to really tell the other side of the story. No matter where you go in South Africa, there's a good story to be told and there's a bad story to be told.
Going on at the moment that's very concerning and very problematic. But there's another side to the story. You know, just look at how the Johannesburg Stock Exchange has performed this year. It's 20% up on 12 months ago. Look at our car sales. Our car sales.
I spend every day of my life researching to find out and to drill down and to discover what the detail is in terms of both the good and the bad, so that I can give a balanced presentation on that.
It tells the South African story that we excel in certain areas and we do very poorly in others.
The first was South Africa The Good News. It sold 12,000 copies in 6 months. Then the next year I produced a book called South Africa More Good News, which sold a similar number of copies. And then the year after I published South Africa 2014, The Story of Our Future, which I co-authored, and that sold 15,000 copies over the period of a year. And then fast forward, in 2008, I did a book called Africa The Good News, and it was really to present Africa differently in the run-up to the 2010 World Cup. SA Good News currently is a website. We post positive stories on a daily basis, 2 to 3 stories every single day. On a weekly basis, we post a newsletter and a blog, and we have a number of additional facilities. We have videos, we have books that we profile, etc. We read in 195 countries around the world. We have about 60,000 dedicated readers, 25,000 subscribers to our newsletter, 14,000 Twitter followers, and about 10,000 Facebook followers. And then in addition to that, I talk on the radio every single week on SAFM about the current good news that's taken place over that week. It's about presenting the full South African story. You know, we confront the bad issues, but even in the bad issues, there are positive stories to be told. I spend a lot of my time focusing particularly on global competitiveness, both the global competitiveness of South Africa versus the rest of the world, and increasingly the global competitiveness of African countries versus the rest of the world. You know, they say a good talk needs to be entertaining, memorable, and relevant. My talks succeed in all 3 of those areas, but I guess my strongest ability is in answering questions about what's happening in South Africa and what's happening in Africa. My personal mantra is, you don't describe the future you see the future you describe. And my major concern is what kind of future South Africans are describing for themselves.
Many African countries, and many of the countries that we would see in a way, either as investment opportunities or as competitors, are taking the question of global competitiveness really seriously. And they're very focused on it in terms of improving their competitiveness to attract investment and to attract business. So, as my Afrikaans master used to say at school, you know, he used to mix these metaphors all the time when we were on the rugby field. You 3 forwards, man, you must hunt in pairs. The other thing he used to say was, guys, you must be careful of change. Very careful of change. Change can happen behind your back, right in front of your eyes. And I think that's what's happening in Africa. Thank you very much.